Jabari Smith Jr. had a pretty rough rookie season. He was kind of lost in the shuffle on a team that's trying to find its identity, and when you're in an environment with little to no structure in regards to your offense, figuring out how to make yourself useful isn't always the easiest thing to do. I think this is something that played a pretty big role in the Houston Rockets parting ways with Stephen Silas and bringing in Ime Udoka to hopefully rein things in and provide some cohesion for this roster that's very young and doesn't seem to have a whole lot of structure right now. Jabari Smith Jr. is the player that's at the forefront of that discussion because in my opinion, he was being used almost entirely wrong during his rookie season. In this video, I want to dive into the mismanagement of Jabari Smith Jr. during his rookie year in terms of how he was being used on the offensive end. And I also want to look at the factors at play that make me pretty confident that he's going to have a much better sophomore season than he did during his rookie season. Now, before we get into all that, huge thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring today's video. With Underdog's NBA Pick'em, they make it super easy to win big. And it's not just for the NBA either. They've also got the NFL, they've got MLB, they've got boxing, pretty much every major professional sport they have on the platform for you to play. All you have to do is pick higher or lower, and you can make picks for as low as $1 and win anywhere from 3 times your money to 20 times your money. And now with Pick'em Insurance, you can still win even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Now, for anyone who signs up today using code AlexHoops, they're going to match your first deposit up to $100. As always, be sure to play responsibly, and once again, thank you to Underdog for sponsoring today's video. Now, first things first, let's take a look at how Jabari Smith Jr. was actually being used on the offensive end last year in terms of the kind of plays he was being put into and the roles he was expected to play. Over 50% of his usage was on spot ups and transition opportunities, and only around 30% of his play type usage was in plays that I would say gave him some level of empowerment and autonomy as a player. My issue with this is that if you're relegating a player that you spent your 3rd overall draft pick on to a role as a spot up shooter and transition play finisher, then you're not really even bothering to figure out the things that they have to offer elsewhere on the offensive end. Now, I'm sure a lot of you saw his performance during the Las Vegas Summer League, and it looked like a pretty stark contrast from his rookie season. I'll be the first person to tell you that just because a player does well in Summer League, it doesn't necessarily mean that that performance is automatically going to carry over into real NBA games, but while watching Jabari Smith Jr., it was really hard not to buy some of the stuff that he was doing. He looked really confident creating for himself out of the post during Summer League, and he actually showed some improved ball handling chops to attack the basket off the dribble, which has frequently been considered a weakness of his. The thing is, a lot of this stuff isn't new, and it's stuff that we actually saw flashes of during his rookie season. Now, because Jabari Smith Jr. isn't the most gifted ball handler in the world, it's important that you actually run actions for him that put him in positions where he can score outside of just sticking him in the corner or on the wing waiting for a kick out. On a very limited number of occasions, we would see the Rockets run dribble handoffs between him and Sengun, something that I hope to see done at a much higher frequency during this upcoming season. Here's an example of one of those plays. When the Rockets busted out this Chicago action where Jabari is going to get this pin down in the corner before coming up to get the quote-unquote handoff from Sengun, which is actually just a between the legs pass backwards, and it allows Jabari to get a nice mid-range pull-up near the free throw line. Although he's not really the fastest player in the world, these same types of plays can be great for getting him ahead of steam going downhill, and he's a good enough of an athlete for his size that he can use his length to step through defenders so he can get to the basket and finish over top of them. I really do think that we're going to be seeing a ton of this stuff from Jabari Smith Jr. this upcoming season, mainly because of the Ime Udoka hire. If you look back at the 2021-22 season when Ime Udoka was still with the Boston Celtics, one major aspect of their offense was these corner pin downs for Jayson Tatum, which helped get him open looks in the mid-range, and also a fair amount of delay actions for both him and Jaylen Brown so they could come off screens to get handoffs and subsequently curl around screens to get good looks in the mid-range. Now, I'm of course not saying that Jabari Smith Jr. is the next Jayson Tatum, but I see no reason that he can't experience a good level of success if he's put into these same positions. And since Ime Udoka was the one running these offensive schemes for Tatum and Brown, I think it's a fair assumption that he might consider doing the same with Jabari. The other thing with Jabari that's yet to be extracted is his post-scoring prowess. Obviously, with a guy like Sengun on the roster who is a pretty polished post scorer, it's hard to justify giving Jabari more post touches, but I think that they scratch different itches when it comes to scoring out of the post. Sengun is, of course, a lot more low post base, using footwork to get by his defenders and finish at the rim, relying on touch when he's away from the basket rather than sheer shooting prowess. Jabari seems to be a lot more successful operating out of the mid post, sizing up his defenders to simply shoot over top of them, or using things like fadeaways to generate space to score in post settings. After all, Jabari Smith Jr. is 6'10" with a 7'1" wingspan. When you're as mobile as he is and you can shoot like he can, there's not really a whole lot of reason why you shouldn't try to extract as much as you can from him as a mid-range scorer, because those are the physical tools conducive to a player being successful in the mid-range and in the mid-post. The big thing I've started to take away from researching his usage is that while he does have a ton of talent when being strictly a spot-up shooter, he's actually more suited to integrate some big man aspects into his game rather than just being stuck on the wing. In particular, I've liked when he's been used as a screener in the pick and roll. During his time at Auburn, he scored 1.36 points per possession when operating as the screener in the pick and roll, shooting 52.9% on rolls to the rim and 58.8% on pick and pop threes. That 3-point percentage as the roll man would of course come down, but it indicates to me that he needs to be given a lot more opportunities to operate as the screener in the pick and roll. Defending Jabari Smith Jr. in the pick and roll is already a little difficult because he's traditionally being defended with a wing defender, not a big man defender. Sengun's pulled out to the arc, leaving very little interior defense, so it makes it easy for Jabari to screen for Gordon before rolling, with Gordon threading the pass, and even though Troy Brown Jr. does make things a little more difficult, it's just not enough to stop Jabari, who can break through the defense and get to the rim for the finish. Now on this play, notice Larry Nance Jr. guarding Sengun in the dunker spot. In this scenario, he's the quote-unquote center matchup with Zion on Jabari. Now on this pick and roll, Zion is going to switch on to Gordon, but Ingram is pretty late to drop back and prevent the entry pass, so Gordon's able to connect with Jabari on the roll. Nance does make the rotation onto him to provide help, but he's not able to prevent him from getting the layup to fall. Jabari offers more than meets the eye operating as a big man, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing to have him on the wing on certain occasions, especially when Sengun is posting up, and it actually makes things pretty easy for both of them. Jabari is a fantastic cutter, especially when Sengun is demanding extra defensive attention in the post. If the Rockets ever execute a pick and roll with Jabari on the weak side, whenever that help comes over to try and stop Sengun on the roll, Jabari always knows when to make that cut so that Sengun can find him for what is usually a very easy 2 points. This is an area that Jabari's feel actually shows through pretty well. Sengun is posting up, and Mobley's operating as that extra help, roaming the paint a little bit, and Jarrett Allen is angling more towards providing help with his back turned to Jabari. So once Sengun goes up, Jabari's going to cut up the middle to give him a dump off option, and it leads to the finish. Anytime a team hedges against an empty corner pick and roll like Fox and Sabonis do here, it forces help from the weak side and leaves Jabari unguarded, and instead of waiting in the corner for a kick out, he takes advantage of the space to get to the rim for what are usually pretty much guaranteed free points since there's hardly any defense available. Numbers suggest that Jabari and Sengun aren't great when sharing the floor together this past season. They have an average offensive rating of 111.5 and an average defensive rating of 122 when they're on the floor together, and both of those are pretty bad ratings. I think that their defense is going to be significantly better under Ime Udoka, and of course I've already shown you that Sengun and Jabari can be successful together on the offensive end if they're used the right way. Jabari Smith Jr. received a ton of criticism prior to and all throughout his rookie season, and while some of that is on him as a player, I'm willing to bet that he would have had a significantly stronger rookie season if he had been used in a more intentional manner and put in some better positions to succeed rather than how he was being used his first year. The good news is that all signs point to him having a much better sophomore season under a coach that more than likely knows how to use him in a more effective manner, and hopefully he's going to have a more prevalent role role in the team's offense. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe and leave a like. That's the #1 way to support me, help me continue making content. If you want to support the channel further, you can click the link in the description to become a patron now. Thank you once again to Underdog for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.